we go. So you know, I'm zooming in today from Lafayette, Colorado, which is right between Boulder and Denver, and it's a 97-degree hot day we're in the store for today. And I am really honored to be working with you all. I've known Terry for many, many years and have a lot of respect for her work, and was just thrilled when she invited me to come in and share a piece of this workshop, which is about exploring the wild nature right outside our doors. And so often we can think that we have to go to remote places or even far away trailheads or wilderness areas to find wildness. And while all those places are amazing and wonderful to visit, the wildness that's right outside our door, in the middle of our cities, in the middle of our apartment courtyards, outside of our offices, is pretty darn incredible. And so what I want to explore today is how to connect, how to find that wildness, and how to really integrate that into your life. So a little bit about me. I have been an environmental educator for about 25 years, and that's taken many forms, including the open space in Boulder, like I mentioned. I've also got a small business called Wild Rhythms, where I do workshops and retreats and individual work with people around nature connection. And I also work at Prescott College in Arizona with environmental education students, and have loved, that's how Terry and I met many moons ago. And it's really is my passion to help people find ways that feel uniquely authentic to you to connect with nature around you. So what we'll do today is we're going to have a little bit of some discussion stuff here at the beginning, and then I've got several activities to share with you that you can take with you out into your own neighborhoods, your own communities, either today, you want to just, if you're all raring to go and inspired, you can, or you can, you know, keep these in your back pocket for when it's convenient. But what I'm hoping to leave you with is a sense of the wildness is absolutely everywhere, and that we are a part of it. And I'm hoping that you leave here inspired to explore that and continue exploring that, especially while we are in these lockdown situations where we can't go to all the lovely, wonderful nature programs offered by the Santa Clara Open Space. This is a chance to do some staying connected until those programs can be back up. So we'll be together here until about 11 o'clock, and I'm always happy to answer questions. So it looks like we have a small enough group. If you have a question, you're welcome to put your video on and wave your hand at us, and or you're welcome to put your questions in the chat, and we'll keep an eye on those and try to answer them. Super informal. You can just insert those anytime. I'm also very open to other ideas you have for connecting to the natural world outside of where you live, you know. So I'll present what I've got here, but you know, there's as many ideas for how to do this as there are people. So if you're, you know, got some kind of idea burning in your mind, I would definitely invite you to share that, because we'll all benefit from it. So before we get into the really fun, juicy nature connection stuff, I want to talk a little bit about when you go out to do these explorations, how to, you know, kind of keep yourself safe and be aware. So a few basic things are: know what the weather is going to do. If you're going to go wandering around for a while, make sure you've got water, sunscreen, hat, jacket, whatever it is that you need. Nothing is more of a bummer than saying, oh, I'm going to go out and do this, and then you're out there and you're like, oh, I wish I had more water, or man, I should have brought my sun hat, or I can feel my cheeks frying as I sit here, so I probably should go home, but I'm really enjoying watching this bird over here. Just think ahead a little bit. The other thing is, as you explore your communities and your places, it's a good idea to know where you're going. So it's one thing if you're walking around the block and you're very familiar with that, but if you're going to explore parks or nearby trails, take a little bit of time ahead of time to see where you're going, check out if there's a trail map, make sure to let somebody else know where you're going, something like that. To kind of do those common sense things. And then the other piece is, when you're out there, watch where you're putting your hands and your feet, what you're doing. You don't want to sit down in a cactus. I've done it. It is not pleasant. I do not recommend it. And I don't know, you know, where you all are, but here on the Front Range of Colorado, you don't want to put your hands under a rock or a bush and not know who might also be under that rock or a bush. So, you know, it's just good to know if you've got snakes in the area, or just to be aware of how to be mindful and be even more aware of where you're putting yourself. So those are just the little things that, so this is, we're at the trailhead still. We're talking about safety for our hike today. So we just put those out there. I don't know if anybody wants, Terry, if you want to add anything else, or if anybody has any questions, feel free to jump in here.
Just, I know that it feels kind of like Big Brother-ish, but if you do put your location settings on your phone, that will track your coordinates. And should anything happen, if you live in a more rural area, fall in a ditch, something like that, you know, if your phone has your GPS location finder on, it's a way that people can find you. Over here, we've had people who accidentally drove off of roads and were found that way. So just keep that in mind. And then I always turn mine off when I'm back at home anyway.
That is a really good point. Yeah, the technology can actually work to our advantage, just like it is right now with all of us having our virtual trailhead gathering. Technology can work in our advantage. So we're talking about nature connection today. So what in the world is that? I would really love to hear from you all. What are the first things that come to mind when you hear the phrase nature connection? Just words, the ideas. Feel free to unmute yourself and share them or type them into the chat, and I'll try to capture what I'm hearing from you all in the chat. But when you hear nature connection, what comes up? There's no right or wrong answer here, just free association. Definitely crickets come up. I hear that. They are part of nature connection. Birds, critters, trees, flowers, definitely, yeah. What else comes up?
I almost think like Native American is the first thing that pops to mind, that kind of a connection.
Yeah, Native American connection. Write that in here. What else do y'all think of? Some things I've heard in the past have been gardening, stargazing, fresh air, organic sounds. Ooh, yeah, I love that. And I love the organic sounds. I think sometimes focusing in on those sounds, it's like so easy to miss things if we're not. Temperature, weather, environment. Yeah, just locating ourselves in the place, you know, I think that's a huge piece of it. Nature connection sometimes means you're out in the environment and the weather is really what you're focusing on. You know, I've definitely been on trails here in Colorado where it was like, I was here looking for wildlife tracks and now I'm thinking blizzard. We're focusing on blizzard and body warmth, and that's it. I'm still connecting to nature. It's just different than what I was planning on when I went out this morning. Definitely the fresh air piece too. You know, sometimes I find if I sit inside, especially in this world now where we're on Zoom so much, and every now and then it's almost like, oh, I just got to get outside where the breeze is going to blow across my skin a little bit. But any other thoughts that come of what nature connection is? I love these. So to me, when I think of nature connection, I think of it as seeing ourselves as part of all of the living world. You know, whether that's we see ourselves in a certain role or doing certain things, nature connection is knowing that we're part of it and that we are as much natural being as every other being that's out there. And it's lovely to get outdoors and explore that. But I will say one of the most intimate ways I can think of that we can connect to nature is thinking about what we eat. Because if we're stuck inside and we're not going out, we're still drinking water and eating food if we're fortunate to be in places where we can do that. And we're taking the earth into us and letting it become part of us. And so I actually worked with a client once who was ridden in a hospital, and she was really struggling because she was missing nature. And the way we worked with that was bringing nature to her by her looking at her plate of food and her salad and strawberries and really thinking, where have these been and how did they get to my plate? You know, and now it's becoming part of me, and it really was a profound thing for her. So we look at nature connection as this expansive lens of all the ways that we are part of this earth. I think it has value. It's fun and it's relaxing and it's really good for our peace of mind. But there's also a value in that I think it helps us to not only see ourselves as part of this larger whole, but extend our sense of community, so that we aren't just speaking of humans, which so often when we hear the phrase community in the news or in media, it means the human community, and of course it can mean that. But if we say community is humans and all of the other beings, all of a sudden our community is massive. If we look at nature connection, we suddenly start to see, like was mentioned over here, the critters and the birds and the trees and the flowers. These are all parts of our community. Getting to know them like we would our neighbors is a really fun part of this. Also, if we think of these members of our community as our neighbors, we know who lives here. What little bird is in the tree, like that robin that I was mentioning earlier that kind of chewed me off the patio last week. Well, that was part of my community. Obviously, she was a neighbor who thought maybe I should be inside for a little bit. Who lives here? Just stepping right outside the door, whether you have a yard or you live in an apartment in a high rise, stepping out and saying, who lives here? Oh, look, there's a tree over there in the parking lot. Or, wow, I didn't realize there was this little ant colony right here next to the sidewalk crack. Or look, there's a little dandelion over there and in the parking lot. Who lives here? It's amazing. That simple act can take 2 minutes and it can change perspective. I think when I do that, every time I do it, I go outside and I find more beings that live here. And I'm outside a lot and I garden a lot, and I would know. I can assure you that every time I ask that question and open my eyes and my heart to it, I am humbled who I have missed in previous times. Other piece that I think is really, really important here is that it allows us to witness our places. So when I say witness our places, what in the world might that mean? Any thoughts on that? How did you first start to pay attention to it? Yeah, good question. Do no harm. Yeah, so part of witnessing the place, do no harm. Yeah. What else goes into witnessing the place? I like to think of it as knowing the ins and outs, the rhythms, the patterns, multisensory. Yeah, exactly. It's like knowing the interconnection of all things. Exactly. If you're witnessing your place, you know that every year on early May, the hummingbirds start to migrate through. You start to count on that. And then what if one year they don't come in May? It's the place witnessing that allows us to go, what's going on? And there have been many examples in environmental conservation for, movements where it was people's witnessing of their places and noticing changes in rhythms and changes in patterns that made people go, wait a second, we need to figure this out. Normally, there's way more amphibian action in the stream right now than there is right now. So what's going on? Let's figure it out. Or, things are happening earlier or later. What is that telling us about our weather? What is that sharing with us? I think there's a lot of power in witnessing our place. And then also one of the most profound things we can do is know our places well enough to really know the interconnections and to know what our places are telling us through witnessing. And it's also just fun. It's fun to pay attention and to say, oh, the hummingbirds are back, yay. Last week I noticed the goldfinches were in my garden on the sunflowers, and that's one of my favorite times of the summer is when the sunflowers are busted out enough that the goldfinches are here, and I just can't even keep my windows closed because I love their chirps, and it reminds me of late summer every single year. It's part of what makes me feel connected here, and it's part of the rhythm of this place that I count on. So all of that philosophical stuff is what is nature connection and why is it important, is to lead us into the really fun stuff of we've all got cool places to explore. So I would love to hear if any of you have a place outside of whether it's your yard or there's a park nearby or a trail nearby that you are wanting to get to know better. I'd love to just hear a little bit about it or why you want to get to know it a little better. What is it that's calling to you? People a second to play with their technology. I see a bunch of black boxes with names. I know there's people behind those. I just know it.
I don't know about you, but I've been really missing the beach. I'm not going. I'm not part of the partiers. That's my personal opinion, not that of the Open Space Authority. But just the thought of like being around the waves and the sand and the water and all of that, I'm just really starting to miss it.
Yeah. I can imagine. I don't have a beach here, but I've started to miss places that, we've got people, trailheads are getting very crowded and there's a lot. And so I've kind of tried to stay away from some places and I've started to miss some of those regular spots where I go. But I do love the beach, and especially as a treat, as a Colorado landlocked person, it's a different rhythm and it's a different expansiveness than what I experience here. You know, to sit on a beach and see the edge of the earth basically kind of curving over. Oh, it's a very, yeah, what else? Who has a park or a trail nearby that, and if you don't want to share, that is okay. You can hold it in your heart and explore it on your own. I just want to invite the places into our conversation. So, okay, we will go with crickets on that. If you get inspired later, feel free to jump in. It looks like we have a comment from Erin. We are avoiding crowded trails as well and have gotten to know our backyard much more intimately these past few months. Kids and I are making it a point to learn the birds that visit our yard. Yeah, excellent. I would agree with that. I feel like knowing my yard and my immediate neighborhood is one of the sort of hidden gifts in this pandemic. Sure, and knowing that when I've craved wildness, having to just go outside and look for it as opposed to go off and find it. So hopefully, Erin, some of these activities will be great and the kids will love. These are all ages kind of activities, so hopefully some of these will be good for you and your kids. So with that then, let's jump into talking about activities. And what I'm going to try is a little high-tech approach since I'm not with you all to give you handouts. I'm going to see if it works to cut and paste the description of the activity into the Zoom, and then I'm going to talk about it and answer any questions, and we'll do that for a few activities here. Let's see how that looks. Oh, good, it stayed formatting. Okay. Yay. I was trying to outsmart Zoom and make sure the formatting stayed. The first activity that I want to talk about, I'm imagining people have heard of, but I want to talk about all the different ways you can keep a nature journal. And the first thing I want to talk about is how there is no wrong way to do it. So I have met with people and clients and in programs who said they were afraid to nature journal because they didn't have time every day. So they weren't doing it at all. Now, I'm going to be honest, I don't have time every day as much as I would love to. Sometimes I just pulling out all the supplies. You nature journal once a month or once a week or when you feel inspired, or 2 hours a day. You know, there is no wrong way to do it. It's about you recording the log of your experience as part of the earth. And it also is a great way to keep track of all of the other activities we're going to talk about. Having a journal is a great way to sort of keep your reflections of these activities so that you can go back and read. And it is very fun, I think, to go back and look like, oh, March 13th, 2020, I saw, you know, it was a moonlit night and I saw a reflection of a raccoon on the fence. You know, it's fun. It marks your life in a way that really pulls you into being the natural ecological being that we all are. So while there's no right or wrong way to do it, a few things I would suggest considering is on your page, whether you're writing or doing art or what you're doing, putting the day, the time, and the place, maybe even the season. Because you're nature journaling, because it's about place connection, knowing where you were and the day and the time is a big part of that story. It's a big piece of the puzzle when you go back to reflect on it later. So just logging that. And in my own, you know, way of teaching this, I often just do that in a very small up in the corner, and then the rest of the page is blank so people can do whatever they want with it. I mentioned the frequency being variable. So my own personal frequency is kind of as needed or as inspired. And sometimes that's very frequent for a while. And sometimes it's big expanses of time in between. And it's just something, I want this to be a fun thing for me, not a thing that I feel obligated to do. And I have another client I've worked with for years who's journaled every day first thing for years, but that's how she starts her day. She sits down with her coffee and spends 10 minutes, and it's just her process. So playing around with yours and finding what really feels good is what I would invite you to do. And then it's anything goes. It's writing, art, collage, taking photographs and putting them in there, poetry, you know, any combination thereof. It's really allows us to use all of our brain in whatever way we want to use it. You know, and I will say I've seen journals where the entries were all art with no words. I've seen all words with no art. And I've seen all kinds of everything in between. Let me check these notes here. I was advised to check phone Weather app gives us info and record and journal the sunrise and sunset time and temperature, highs and lows. Yeah, exactly. That kind of thing. Moon patterns are great to record. Things that just tie us into the rhythm of the natural world and help us feel grounded there. All of these are really fun to record. I'm going to tell you, when this pandemic hit, and I don't know about you all, but I felt very disoriented for 2 or 3 weeks, and all of my field-based work that I basically makes me feel normal was gone. And what worked for me was going outside and doing exactly what Mary Alice just mentioned. You know, what time is it that is the sun setting? When is it coming up tomorrow? What plants are blooming right now? What bulbs are coming out of the ground? Just putting those things in the journal. And with the journal too, you know, you can decide if you want to do long entries, short entries, all different sizes. It's really anything for you. I want to introduce that first because, as I said, it's in and of itself, it's probably one of the most profound ways to explore the wild nature all around you and record it. And it forces us to kind of focus in and use our cognitive and emotional and spiritual skills all together. It's also a great way to record your experiences and other activities. So let's see, I started letting myself wake up naturally when the sun comes up and not by an alarm clock. Oh, right, yeah. That's a really fun treat. I think I love that. Theoretically, I would love to do that. I unfortunately have a bunch of critters in this house that think that waking up naturally is earlier than I want to get up. So but I think, yeah, you know, not having a, you know, if there's a day you can do that and let the sun come in your windows, you know, your nature connection for the day has already started. But are there any thoughts or questions about nature journaling here before we move past that? As I said, I put that up in the chat, so if you want to cut and paste the description of these activities into your own Word document, you're welcome to do that. And then you can have that to refer to later. I'll also provide my email at the end, and if anybody needs more information on any of these activities, I can certainly provide that too. Love the idea. I can't believe I've never thought of it before. Well, Emma, you are not alone. There are so many things over the years that I have read about or learned about a nature connection, and I thought, why didn't I think of that? That's that. Which is why it's just important for us to all share it, because you know these ideas can be really powerful in our lives, and a lot of times the routines of our lives and the demands of our world can get overlooked. So yeah, I totally relate to that. Anything else on nature journaling here?
Hey Debbie, we did have I guess it's one of those things where you go on Facebook and it's like a watch party. So we did do that for open space yesterday. So if anybody wants to learn a little bit more in depth about nature journaling itself, we have a webinar by John Muir Laws. So he came and talked about some techniques and stuff like that. And he's also pretty funny. So.
Oh, he is excellent. That is fantastic. Oh, I would highly recommend, if you didn't see that, to check that out, because that will just only enhance what we're talking about today and create a much richer journaling opportunity. Excellent. Yay. Okay. All right. Well, if there's no questions on that, the next activity I want to share with you is, oh, we got a question. Is that on YouTube now about the John Muir Laws nature journaling?
Yes, and so I'm actually looking for the link right now.
Oh, cool. Okay, so you can pop the link into here then. Awesome. Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm going to check that out too. Hey. So this next activity is a silent walk or hike or sit. And I will tell you that I've been leading field-based programs and nature connection experiences for 25 years, and I try really hard to put this in some form in every program that I do with people, no matter what the age. Now, if it's a bunch of kids who just had a bunch of sugar snacks, we're not going to start out a hike with the silent walk. We're going to hike for a long time first. It's an ideal way to do a few different things that will shift your focus away from your mind chatter into the place, which, depending on the day, that may or may, you know, sometimes that can take me a while, depending on what I'm doing. And it kind of allows us to change our natural conversational tendencies as humans focusing on what's the story the land has to share with me. What are the story I can gather from the landscape through paying attention to what I'm hearing or seeing or feeling or smelling, you know, whatever senses I have the ability to use. How can I learn from this place, and how can I just sink into it? And I encourage this until you feel your heart rate slowing down, your mind chatter slowing down. Like I said, there are days that this can happen in a few minutes personally, and other days where I can walk around for an hour or two and not really get past just needing to keep quiet and keep focusing on my senses. You know, it just depends on where things are. But it allows us to be aware of our senses too. You know, we are very focused oftentimes, if we have the ability to see, that is a dominant sight for the human being. And so this allows us to kind of choose to focus on the other ones. You know, what are the things I'm hearing? And you can sit in one spot and close your eyes and just listen, or smell, or touch. Again, the touching, you know, this is where knowing where you're putting your hands, knowing what your poison ivy or what that looks like. But once you know those things, you can, most of the world is very safe to touch and feel, and the pine cones and the soil dripping through your fingers, and different grains of size of granules in the soil, and all of these things. It's like how often we walk on past what looks like just dirt. When we reach down and actually pick it up, there's an entire world of textures and sensory awareness in there. And that can happen right outside our doors. Look, I love lying on the ground and watching the environment from that perspective. It's been powerful to see the world as a smaller being looking up. Absolutely, Emma. And actually, one of the activities we're going to talk about is a perspective taking. So that's a perfect example of that, because it really does shift us if we say, how can I be here in this place in a way that I don't normally do it? And normally we would be moving through the place with focusing on what we're seeing and where we're going. And so the silent hike, walk, or sit is a really nice invitation. It's easy, it's free, it can happen anywhere. I would encourage you to not be swayed by the human-made sounds. I've had some incredible silent walks around airport terminals where there were actually birds in the airport, there were insects in the stairwells of the airport, and there was certainly a lot of sound. But when I went with this attitude of, all right, my plane is late, I'm stuck in this airport, I'm going to do a silent nature hike through the airport right now. It was amazing what I saw. Conversations, the artwork that looked like, you know, nature represented pieces, the like I said, the flock of birds through the Denver International Airport that look for crumbs all the time. It's everywhere. You don't have to be worried about, oh no, that airplane just flew overhead and it just messed up my listening to the nature sounds. Sure, there was an airplane overhead, but who knows what was going on that airplane? Who knows who was flying to DC to advocate in Congress for some conservation effort? You know, like, you just never know. So if we look at the soundscape as all of it, we let our silence, our talking stop. And especially if we are walking with somebody else, where we could miss all of the world around us because we're in conversation. Let me give you the little prompts. I have a couple of journal prompts here. I would recommend, if you did do this piece, and either while you're still outside or once you come back in, the reflection piece is a really important part. And let me get this in here for y'all. Okay. So the journal prompts: what did I sense that I have never sensed before? And what did the land tell me? And you can interpret that however you want. You know, certain places you can see, if you're really focusing on your senses, you can hear the wind moving through trees in a certain way. It tells you that there's a wind pattern that goes from here to there, and it, you know, or you can hear the birds behaving a certain way and then they go silent. Well, what does that tell you? Does that tell you that there's something that was disruptive to the birds? Could possibly have been us walking through there. You never know. Just what did you sense that you never sensed before, and what did the land tell you? And letting that take your mind. Any questions on that? We'll move on to the next one. I don't want to run out of time here. So I wish for all of you many, many, many hours of silent walking or hiking or sitting, wherever you are. Even if those hours are in 5-minute increments, it will still have value in the nature connection process for sure. So another activity, which is the one that Emma gave us the lovely, beautiful, perfectly timed segue for a minute ago when she said she loves lying on the ground and watching from a different perspective. This one I call the 3 views walk or hike or sit. So 3 views is taking some time to focus on the world below your knees. You know, out here in Colorado, we have some prairie landscapes that look very barren unless you look at the world, you know, 16 inches and lower. And then it's this incredible wild kingdom of all sorts of plants and activities and burrowing animals and all sorts of things. But if you were to just walk through it without stopping and looking at that 16 inches and below the knee, it would be this entire mist world. This is a really fun thing to do no matter where you are, especially if you're in a spot. I actually did this. I was waiting in line for a concert years ago. It was a general admission concert at Red Rocks here in Colorado, and we were in line and couldn't move out of line. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm looking at the world in all these different levels. And where it was really fun was this lower level. I could not believe all in the rocks where I was standing, there were all these little intricate insect life doing all this. It was like a condominium of spiders and insects. And honestly, I could have missed it if I had just been talking with my companions or not looking that low. So with that, of course, is looking at the world below. Of course, the next obvious one would be looking above your head. So laying on the ground and looking up, or like Emma described, laying on the ground and just sort of where, you know, even if you're looking there, what is it, how does it look up, whatever level you're normally used to looking at? So I'm 5'4". I see a lot of the world at 5'4". I can tell you a whole lot about that. My favorite trails, I know which branches come off the trees that I don't want to hit my head on. You know, do I really know this? And it's really fun if you're doing journaling and you like drawing and artsy stuff to lay under a tree, for example, and sketch out what it looks like looking up, because it's a whole different tree than when you look sideways as you're walking at your normal height. And then also focusing on the world right at your chest level. Because even though we are used to our chest level, sometimes we are so in our heads that we can walk right by or sit out on our patios or our picnic tables at work and totally miss what's right there. So it's actually kind of an interesting thing sometimes to say, I'm going to make myself stay very focused. I am not going to worry about my to-do list, or, oh, I forgot to buy, you know, shampoo at the grocery store, or whatever's in my head. I'm going to focus on what am I witnessing right here. So those 3 views, and you could add 300 views if you wanted to. With kids, we talk about this as like the mouse view, the fox view, and the hawk view. So if you're working with kiddos, that can be a fun way to sort of pretend to be a mouse and crawling through, and how every little rock becomes a big boulder, and you know, every blade of grass is like this massive, you know, tree in the jungle. Just taking on that perspective. And I think it's fun actually to think of the other animals as well, whether or not I'm a kid. I really enjoy doing that. Terry says, I have helped adults notice things new on the ground by putting toy butterflies on flexible sticks that flutter. Ah, yeah, that's a good point. Kids will see stuff. Yeah. And you know, also dogs. So kids and dogs can be the greatest nature hike leaders, because they will find things that we, you know, often as adults, we will just miss. Now, I'm not saying everything your dog sticks their nose in, you might not want to stick your nose into, but I have seen so many things that I would have missed if it wasn't for my dogs. So if you've got dogs and they like to hike with you, I mean, by all means, it'll be, you know, a different program than if you were sitting quietly, but take them with you. Yeah, don't eat that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so, and kids are as well. I mean, you might spend 3 hours going 20 feet, but the world will be different. You will see a different world. One of the joys I've had over the years of leading nature programs with kids is exactly that, is that it is a different world. So let me put that stuff in here for you. And the journal prompts for that, who lives here? You're exploring the world at those 3 different levels. Who lives here? And then what would it feel like to live only at one of those levels? That's especially, personally, I find that very fun to think of mouse or the ant level, where what seems so small to me is so large. And also, you know, eagles and hawks that can see miles in one swoop of an area. What would it feel like to live at those levels? And just challenging our minds, let go of our normal way of being in the world and taking a perspective of somebody else that is part of our community. Any questions or thoughts on that? Okay, cool. All right, questions are of course welcome at any point. This next activity is probably my favorite, and it feels a little weird to me to be blazing through these, but I really want to give you some stuff to go practice out in the field. You know, if we were together all day, we would do one at a time and then go do it and then come back and talk about it. And in our COVID-19 world, I definitely want to leave time at the end for you to reflect and questions, but any questions along the way, this is a lot of information. So this activity is probably one of my favorites. It's connection with a single being is what I call it. Just allowing 30 to 45 minutes minimum for this, but it could potentially be shorter, and it could certainly be longer. But finding one being, whether it's a rock in your garden or a tree in a park nearby, an ant, you know, that lives in the colony right outside your office building, but finding one being and sitting down and saying, I'm just going to spend this time with you right now. I'm not worried about covering ground. I'm not worried about my sensory awareness. I'm not doing anything. I just want to be with you, and I want to know what it is that you're doing and what is your life like. You know, let yourself be drawn to who this being is. You know, it may have an interest. I did a program once. There was a woman who said there was a tree in her garden that she'd always had an interest in, and she'd owned her home for about 10 years and had never spent time with the tree. She thought it was very pretty. She put flowers around it, but she never really took time to spend with the tree and get to know the tree. So she went out and did it, and then she wrote me an email afterwards, and she said she was in tears the whole time because she felt like she was meeting a new friend for the first time. And you know, I started to get tears when I read her email, because I thought, oh my gosh, that tree's been out there and she's been caring for it but not knowing it. So, you know, kind of think about for a second, maybe even right now, take a moment and think, are there any beings in your immediate world that come to mind as ones you'd like to spend some time with and get to know? And if they come to mind, feel free to tell us or put them in the chat. Who might you want to go spend some time with and get to know better? Yeah, reunited, I love that word, exactly. Being reunited to these beings. Any thoughts coming to mind? Okay, well, I'll keep sharing. Produce, yeah, exactly. And what a time to do it when it's becoming, you know, for a lot of the world, it's becoming abundant season of produce. Pigeon in the garden, yeah, exactly. If you've got a pigeon that visits your garden on a regular basis, that's part of your community. That's a neighbor, and how fun to get to know that neighbor a little bit and just to recognize what is the pigeon doing and when and how, and coloring of the feathers, the pigeon, you know, what beautiful, all of those pieces. Before this activity, you let yourself be drawn, or you just pick a place. Oh, I'm trying to copy the pigeons talk and have, yes, exactly, have a lovely conversation. I love that, yeah. But you find your being, and then you go hang out, and you let yourself sit there and breathe. So this is again the piece of opening up. You know, let the heart rate slow down, take those deep breaths that help us sort of sink into beingness and sitting there with that being. And then let your awareness open. Just let it, you know, no agenda. You know, whether you're going to have life-changing visionary experience with this being, or you're just going to really enjoy getting to know it a little bit, having no agenda is really important, because I think that's where we just let the natural, it's just like if you have a new neighbor move in or a new coworker come in, I would make a wild assumption here that you don't walk right up to them asking for wisdom and wanting to share your whole self with them the first day. You might walk up and say, hey, welcome to the neighborhood. You know, I'm Deb. I live down the street if you need anything. You know, and maybe over time you become a friend, and maybe then you say, oh, when I need clarity, I'm going to go sit by this tree. You know, I know I'm going to get clarity if I sit by this tree. But you don't have to start out that way. No expectation. But you let yourself sense in, you take the time. This is why this activity I recommend at least 30 to 45 minutes, so you can really take the time to sink in. And then let your inspirations lead you. Just open up your journal and let yourself write, sing, draw, nothing but sit there, fall asleep next to your being. This is okay. This is deep nature connection. If you relax enough in your garden next to that pigeon and you sack out, it just means that you needed to rest and that you're falling into your natural rhythm. So I think that's the other piece with a lot of this kind of stuff, is that not having that agenda and knowing that taking a nap in the yard can be just as important as having a really meaningful nature journaling entry. You know, and just letting it, yeah. And Perry's, one of the most effective ways to get animals in my yard has been putting water out for the birds. Yeah, I would agree. I live in a really dry climate too, and I have some bird baths out, and they're party stations, really. That's what they are. There is not social distancing happening at the bird baths. I can tell you that. Well, unless a hummingbird decides to come in and just put everybody out of there. But, no, drama. Then there's drama. Then that's cool to watch. But when you're with your being, then this is the time there, and then the journal prompts are the key. So let me put these journal prompts into the chat window. Okay. And here y'all go.
I just want to check on everybody. We have about 10 minutes left. Is everybody doing okay?
Crickets. We're all in good shape, I think. Awesome. So the journal prompts for this being piece are, what do you have in common with this being? And let yourself go crazy with this. If you're sitting next to a rock, I guarantee if you sit there and think about it, you will find things that you have in common with that rock. Even if what's most common is that you're both sitting in the same place at the same time. But that counts, right? And also, how are you different from this being? So if you're sitting with that rock, well, that rock is at the mercy of a lot of other forces to move. Most likely as humans, we've got a little bit more self-agency in that regard. Same with a tree. You know, a tree is going to grow where it's planted, and it's a very different world. Oh, how are you similar? How are you different? Then this one I think is really fun, is ask the being and just let your mind play with your imagination. Who are you? You know, what is your story? And what do you want me to know? This is eco-psychology work. This can go to very spiritual places for people. It can be a fun activity that makes people laugh and giggle. I've seen kids do this where they've come up with the most wild, elaborate stories of how a plant got to this location. What I love about it and what value it has for all of us, no matter what age, is that it has us seeing into the stories of what it means to be part of an interconnected web. If we're thinking about how did that rock get here, we're thinking about a whole lot of process and a whole lot of activity and movement and rhythm. And we are looking at the world in a way that isn't just taking the rock out of the way while we're walking, but we're seeing it as a piece of a much larger process. So who are you? What is your story? And what do you want me to know? And the what do you want me to know one, people resonate with us on different levels, but this is one where I've seen some pretty profound experiences for people where they're like, you know, when I need to decide something, I'm going to sit by my tree and I'm going to say, help me out here, and just let whatever comes to me come to me. You know, and it's pretty amazing. I mean, I can say that this is one of the areas where we can then start to explore what our deep connection really feels like to us uniquely, because we all have our own ways of being in the world. And then the last journal prompt I would recommend for this one is, what thoughts come to mind as you spend time with this being? You know, just what does it do to your mind? What ideas do you have? You know, I've created entire programs for open space department. You know, while I was on a trail asking, what comes to mind while I'm out here? What would I want to do with people on this trail? You know, like, I didn't go out with an agenda. I just thought, I just need to be open to this. I just need to be open to this. So this is one where you could do this, and as I said, it could be hours even. You can extend it to a place too. So you can say, I'm gonna focus on, you know, this part of the beach for the next 3 days. I'm gonna camp out here, and I'm gonna just pick beings around this beach. Boy, as I say that, I wanna go do that right now. Just go find all the different beings in the location and do this. So in this process here, I've kind of built up from the journaling, which is foundational piece that kind of weaves its way through. I would imagine you can sort of see the relevance here. And into the silent hike, which, or walking or sitting, which allows us to tap into a different rhythm and a different way of being, which also weaves through all of these activities. So I would definitely say, if you're planning to go create a nature retreat for yourself for a day, consider starting with that silent hike, or an afternoon, starting with the silent piece, and just moving your mindset into that, and then playing with the other activities and other ones that you create. It's a great way to start. And it's you know, the order of these is not an accident, because I think that that's a really important piece to help us shift our mindset into the place awareness, and into where we can be open to what wild and amazing ideas we might have while we're sitting next to a piece of driftwood on a beach. You know, or the slug in our garden that we just finally said, I give up. Obviously, you're going to eat basil, so you win. Okay, I'm going to get to know you now, because here you are. So moving through those places, it will help us to see ourselves as part of the place, will help us to see what wildness is around us and to know it a little bit. All of this requires nothing more than what we have, even if you don't have a journal. Going outside with just your faculties. You know, you are a natural being, you are a naturalist, and you are part of the wildness around you, no matter what. Everything else is a bell or a whistle. Art supplies in a journal, super fun, really awesome. The bell and a whistle. So, cool bell and a whistle, but don't let yourself be detoured. If you're at a meeting and you are like, I have 10 minutes and I gotta get outside, go outside. Be part of that wildness. Step into your ecological self, even for just a couple of minutes, and just breathe it into you and remind yourself that it's there, because it is what keeps, I think, for me, it's what keeps me sane. It's what gives me a sense of being part of something bigger, even when things feel a little bit chaotic. So with that, I would love to hear any thoughts or questions. We have just a few more minutes, and I want to respect your time so you can get out there and start exploring. So any thoughts or questions? Oh, thank you, Mary. Yeah, the thought that we are part of wildness. Yeah, we really are. We really are. You know, and if you ever question that, I mean, I don't know, one of the wildest places I've ever been was a subway in a big city, you know, where it was like, oh, wow, this is wild. You know, wildness is everywhere. You know, it is everywhere. Yeah. Any thoughts or questions or any other connection ideas or activities that you all want to share? I mean, this is an open forum here.
Don't forget to show them all about your, I can post a link to your webpage, like in the chat,
Oh, right.
and then let them know that, you know, Debbie has a lot of really remarkable wisdom. And this was a lot to squish into like 1 hour, because I know that she has so many amazing ideas and ways to help you connect. So feel free to go check out her website and make sure that you sign up for other workshops with her if you would like to.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I would love also, I'll put my email address in here too. I would be more than happy to chat further. Or if you have resource question ideas or things like that, you're very more than welcome. Let me make sure I type it correctly. Yes, it's such tiny little print on the screen in the Zoom chat. Like, yeah, you are more than welcome to reach out. I really love to connect with folks, and I will also put in my calendar. I've got a couple of upcoming workshops, and there'll be more in the fall. And right now, everything is virtual. But one thing I'm going to say is that if there's something that COVID-19 has taught me, is that I will continue to do virtual work because, and field work here in Colorado. But I really loved getting to know my community from so many other places that it's not letting this part go. So I hate to say thanks to COVID for that, but it is something that has evolved quickly because of that. So we'll just leave it there. But
Avra's got a pretty funny story on there too in the chat.
oh, Doug has been crawling over my laptop during this and annoying me, and I want to feel more benevolent towards it. What exercise to do? Oh, I love that. I think starting with who are you and what is your story? What is your story, little bug? Why are you into this laptop? You know? And also, one of the things with insects, it's just like, holy cow, the shapes and the colors. I mean, I feel like every single time I sit outside with a book, I get somebody landing on it who I have never seen before. And it's like, who are you? And I all of a sudden it's like, okay, you've got these legs and these colors, and I know I've never seen you before. And I've lived here in this place. I should have seen all the insects by now. Nope. So yeah, it's you know, part of the process. So who knows with that insect, if you were to spend some time with that connection with a single being, I would love to hear if that takes you any place cool, because
Hey, Mary was asking, so she was asking about the ability, do you have the ability to take them on a hike in your area? Do you have a helmet cam or a GoPro, or would you be interested? Like, so I guess what we've run into here is, do you have good cell signal where you can take them on a walk and live stream your experience while you're out there?
That is a cool idea. I actually just recently purchased a little stabilizer for a phone, you know, and I've got to learn how to use it. And okay, you're inspiring me, because I was thinking this would be cool to offer even as like a Facebook Live, and I hadn't moved on it. But okay, I appreciate that, Mary, because I think it would be fun. And I think it'd be fun for us all to be able to do with each other, because then we could see so many places where we aren't, you know, like if Terry, if you're on a beach, I can tell you, I want to be there with you. You know, I don't have one of those here. So thank you for that. I will commit to learning how to use my stabilizer stick, which I'm a little intimidated by because I just am. So I will figure that out. See what else? I am grateful that COVID-19 has encouraged us to find joy and gratitude closer to home. Yeah, I think there has been a piece of that I've seen in my neighborhood. People out in the parks, more dogs than I even knew lived here, out getting walks. You know, there has been a piece. Oh, yay, test group for mini hikes. Thank you. Yeah, Mary, I appreciate that. Yeah, throw me an email with a way to contact you, and because a test group will be very necessary for me to feel comfortable with the techno part of that. I would feel much more comfortable with mountain lions and lightning and rattlesnakes than I will be with a little phone.
I often practice on my own Facebook page before I do it on the agency page. So, and you know, you can be goofy and silly and trip over stuff, you know, and your friends will forgive you or be entertained.
That's a really good idea. You better watch out, Terry, because you're on my page. You may be having to give me feedback on that.
Woo-hoo! I think we could do that.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing this. You know, this is brought to you by the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority. And we're really interested in helping people reconnect to nature. And the one thing that we've been able to do, you know, throughout all of this has been keeping our preserves open so that people can go and experience things, and being greeted in the parking lot by staff who can tell you which trails and what direction. Everything's one directional and stuff like that, just to keep you safe. And so doing programs like this, like with Debbie, has been a lifeline for us to be able to go virtual and talk to these amazing people, like, you know, all over the world even. So thank you so much for being a part of this. I really appreciate it. And don't forget to get Debbie's email in the chat, and click on her link for her webpage if you like. And thank you so much, everybody, for being a part of this. Thank you, Deb.
Thank you for the invitation, and I wish you all many happy explorations right outside your door.